by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying.
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to another Haftarah review, another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH CHOKMAH, located at 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Being our address, thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thanking the Creator for health. Also getting over a little ailment here, but Yah is good all the time, and I'm thankful for him for allowing me to heal up and to get better. Giving glory to the supreme intellect of the universe, Yehudah, and I pray that the Creator of heaven and earth be with us all and protect us. Hallelujah. At this moment, want to give due respect to the leadership of our congregation, even my brother, Chief Prince Yehudah ben Yissaschar. Pray that the Creator be with him, be with his family, his household, bless them. Also praying that the Most High God be with all of our elders, that he continue to be with all of our brothers and sisters, and to all the listeners online, all of you that continue to support us, that continue to help us to build and to grow. We thank you all for all that you do for us. We're going to move straight ahead, and we're going to go into the Haftarah for the parasha, or the Sidra Khuquat. And to break that down, it will be none other than one of my teachers and my mentors, even Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Baruch Hashem. First of all, I'd like to give praises to the Supreme Tongue Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respect to the platform on the D.C.B channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yehudah ben Yissaschar, and the host people of the princes, chiefs, Maureen, Rabbinate, brothers and sisters, visitors to this channel. Greet you in the tongue of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem. And early Shabbat Shalom. Adonai, Septai Titakupi Yagi Tilatheka, Olo Dama lips, and my mouth should declare that praise. First of all, I'll be going over, I'm mainly going to focus on the Haftarah Khuquat, but the Sidra Khuquat is in the stars in Numbers, this 19th chapter, first verse, for those that might want to just focus in on it. And it goes all the way to the 22nd chapter, the first verse, and that's the whole portion of Khuquat. And whereas the book of the Haftarah for Khuquat would be in the book of Judges, which would be the 11th chapter of Judges, the first verse going all the way to the 33rd verse. Just a refresher is that when we say sidros and sections, we got to always remember that the scriptures, for those that might be new or first times or might not recall, that it was said that the scriptures was never written in chapters and verses like we have today, but it's convenient and something good. It's, we keep it. It was, done by a Christian monk, and it was, and it was good. But for us, when we say the Sidra, which means the order, and the Sidra is made up of 7 parshiot, which is little sections, and that is what we consider portions of the book that we go into. All right. Now, last time we finished off with, in the book of Numbers, when we focusing on the Korach's rebellion. And one of the things about when we focus on Korach's rebellion, the last thing we talk about is the tithes of the tithes concerning the Levites. So it shows how the Levites was to earn, their keep. amongst the children of Israel, because they wasn't given land property per se, of their own, in a general sense. But here in 19th chapter, it's opened up, and the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the Lord, which the Lord had commanded, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring thee a red heifer, faultless, wherein is no blemish, and upon which never came a yoke, and shall give her unto Eleazar the priest." All right, now, what is important here that I like to bring out, the word Khuquat. Khuquat means a statute. Now, we got statutes, mishpatim, which is judgment and sentences or instances, and we got edut, which is testimonies. Like the edut, an example of an edut is when we deal with Passover Seder night, and we ate the bitter herbs, to remind us of bondage, and the matzah to show that, we left Egypt in haste. So we had unleavened bread. So we're leaving Egypt in haste. So edut is like testimonies or witnesses, something that could bear witness to an event. All right, mishpatim, in the general sense, which judges or sentences, it's more like laws like don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't murder, do not murder. So those laws, we pretty much understand the rationale to that. All right. Whereas now when we talk about ochot, which is chukim in the plural, is actually those statutes that sometimes don't fit a mental rationale in that sense. And so what's interesting is that though this siddur is called Khuquat, in Hebrew it says Zot Khuquat HaTorah, all right, which means this is the statute of the Torah. Now, if we're going to be talking about mostly the red heifer, then why would we focus on actually, saying this is the statute of the Parah Adama, the red heifer? This is the law, Torah, of the red heifer. Why are we talking about the statutes? And that's one of the questions we could ponder about, though we get specifics concerning a particular item here. And we know we're going to deal with the red heifer, which is a cow, and also for those that might not be familiar with those old English terms. And what red, it's not like what we consider the color red in a sense, it's just a general sense. I guess you would call it like more like a brownish look all over. But if it had two hairs on its coat, that's any other color other than all one color, then it's disqualified as a red heifer. And what's unique about that the process this animal is slaughtered is one of the animals that's actually slaughtered outside the camp. Now, most things are slaughtered within the precincts of the camp, but this particular item here is slaughtered without the camp. And we know what's interesting is that the priest had to be there. And when we talk about the priest in this case, and this first time we talk about Eleazar, the son of Aharon, had to be there. And not only is it supposed to be slaughtered, but he had to sprinkle the blood towards the tent of meeting. And we know also that when they're slaughtered, they burn it all up. And when they burn it all up, in the ashes, that the whole process makes everybody unclean. They gather the ashes and into a spot in a place, put it up, and these ashes are going to be used for purification. But it gives you the formula how that it's actually slaughtered and burned up to ashes, and the ashes are actually gathered. And then with the mixture of water, concerning the process of the ashes, that this is what you use when use with the hyssop, which is a a plant you use to sprinkle water. You dip and sprinkle water upon an individual. All right. This is a process. This whole process, when there's everybody involved in the preparation of it, unclean. All right. When we talk about unclean, all right, this doesn't mean that you're dirty because you got dirt on you, mud on you. It means ritually defiled according to the Creator, spiritual defiled, something that you can't really see. So now you're dealing with something that you can see, and you burn it up, and everybody's involved with it. The person that slaughtered, the person that actually, gather the ashes, the priest that actually deal with it, dipping and sprinkling the blood, and those that gather and put it in one spot, they all become unclean for the day. But yet this process is made to purify somebody that's unclean by the day. And within this chapter, we talk about, the process of a person being dead. We know that this process and this ritual only can be done when the Mishkan is standing, or later on when the temple was built. As long as the temple was built, then you can go through this process of purification. Now we say, well, why such great length about a dead body as opposed to a dead animal? And then we talk about an animal that's even unclean. That's we get either an unclean animal, and we don't go through that process like that. Those that were mistakenly, hopefully, had eaten something that's forbidden, they don't go through that long process like that. That type of purification. And also, neither do a woman when she come off a monthly cycle, nor off a childbirth. She don't go through that major purification to this degree. But when it comes to a person that's exposed to the dead, and it gives you criteria, if a man, they say in the tent, because most people would die at home in some enclosure. That gives you, they tell you about the whole place become dead. And you say, wow, I don't see anything flying around. But spiritually, it's considered dead. And then you can always discuss it with your teachers about what would make that spiritually defiling. We know also that when we look at the places where you become defiled at, we know that, it talks about in this particular portion about on a grave, a man die in a house, or a guy go on a grave, or a guy touch a bone, or a part of a man that was slain by the sword, just a regular dead body out in the open field. They become defiled, and they be defiled so long, for 7 days. Now, some people will have the view that only if a man die in a tent, well, that's when you have very little suspicion about his death. And I leave that for the various teachers to discuss it, because I had many conversations with different teachers from various areas, and pretty much people have different viewpoints on that. But I'm gonna share some insight into part of my viewpoint. One thing is that a grave site is a permanent place for the dead. A funeral parlor is a temporary abode for the dead. Now, in ancient times, people dealt with their own dead, and they'd take them out, and a family buried them. So that limits it. But we didn't go like viewing the body and everything like that, which is interesting in this here. And also that some people believe that since the guy didn't die in the funeral parlor, that to go to the funeral parlor is not like going to the grave site. But the funeral parlor is actually a home for the dead. It's just a temporary home. Whereas the grave site is a permanent home in transition. But like I said, you can discuss it with your various teachers too. They may have, various viewpoints on that. Also, in the hospital, somebody died in the hospital every single day. So now, if somebody died in the hospital every single day, you got to ask, is the door open? or is the door closed when the individual died? Also, when you transport the body, what course does it take? And also, if it's an elevator, are you riding in that same elevator with that body? So these are some of the variables we got to ask. So according to most traditional rabbinic practices, since the temple's not standing today, we can never be clean from the dead, no matter how long we isolate ourselves without being sprinkled with that process of those ashes. So, and one of the things, what brings up the question about what makes it a cult is that how is it that something that makes somebody pure, everybody in the process of dealing with it and the making of it becomes impure? All right. And then they have to be sprinkled on the third and seventh day. And then one of the areas is that a clean person, which would be a Kohen, as you say, not a regular Joe Smo, like me, not a regular Joe Smo, but it had to be a Kohen that actually sprinkle this ashes on a person that's defiled by the dead on the third day of his uncleanness and on the seventh day of his uncleanness. Now, I'm just going to read this one little point here. I'm not going to spend long on it because I know a lot of people dealt with it already. But, and these are one of the things that's become very controversial. And then it's Aaron's son's dealing with it, not Aaron at this time. And also, it gives you an insight about when guys were unclean by the dead, where they had to institute a second Pesach. So we're reading it about now in the book of Numbers. But you had to have a process of being clean from the dead prior to that particular time. When they brought to Moses, also said, we're unclean with the body of man. So it's a lot of events that went on and took place. So when you talk about, is this law that's coming into play now? It couldn't be coming into play now. It had to be into play prior to the establishment of the Mishkan. We're just reading about it as of now. So when we go a little further, excuse me, and we look at, I just want to focus on this one verse. From the 19th verse to the 19th chapter of Numbers. It says, and the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the third day and on the seventh day. And on the seventh day he shall purify him, and he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at evening. All right, now, what is interesting is that we got to say, well, we know a Kohen does this, but if he's purifying an individual, and what's unique, there's always a controversy about this. They said through the whole process of making this stuff and preparing this stuff, that everybody become unclean. But in this process here, it bears some discussion, because now it says, once again, and a clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the third day and on the seventh day. And on the seventh day he shall purify himself, and he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean at evening. Who is going to be clean at evening? And who is the one that's being impure? Whereas in the beginning, it talks about everyone dealing with the process, making it for the purpose of purification. And yet, when it's time to sprinkle the guy on the third day, you don't even mention stuff about bathing. Mind you, this is a Kohen. Only on the seventh day, mention about a person shall wash his flesh, clothes, and bathe himself in water, being clean to the evening. Now, anybody that's involved in the process in the beginning is only clean to that evening when they wash themselves, dealing with this ritual. The person that's dead, contaminated by the dead, is ritually unclean for 7 days. But he must be sprinkled with this formula of the ashes, the red heifer, and stuff like that, and on the third and seventh day. So they have some debates to say the Kohen at this point doesn't become unclean, and then some say the Kohen do become unclean. So when you look at the verse very carefully, I'm gonna leave that up to your various teachers to discuss with you. I have my views, but I don't want to, I want you to do some real discussion on this particular verse, because the majority figure at this point here, they say that the Kohen would not be unclean when he sprinkled on the 3rd and the 7th day. And one of the things that makes this such a strange ritual is that how is it that everybody has become filthy? And if somebody you trying to help get clean, normally some of that's supposed to rub off on you. But here you pulling the guy up as opposed to putting them down. So you bring them up into a congregation, into a sanctuary position, So therefore, most people would be under the consensus and idea, and concept that the Kohen at this point on the 3rd day and the 7th day doesn't become unclean while he's pouring it. Others on the reverse side. But when you read the verse carefully, they're only talking about on the 7th day, somebody going to be unclean to the evening. All right, so we know everything is done at daytime. It's never done at night. So that's just figure I'll just leave that out. And I'm going to the 20th chapter of Numbers, and I like to look at the opening. And it says, and the children of Israel, even the whole congregation came into the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month, and the people abode in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there, and there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people strove with Moses and spoke, saying, would that we had perished when our brethren perished before the Lord. Why, and why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness to die there, we and our cattle? And wherefore have you made us to come up out of Egypt, to bring us bring us in unto this evil place? There is no place of seed or figs or vines or pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tent of meeting, and fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. All right. Now, we know about the story about the rock. All right. And we know about the people thirsting about water. We know traditionally they say all the wells and water was in the merit of Miriam, cloud of glory, then the merit of Aharon, and also the man in the merit of Moshe. All right, that's just a lot of viewpoints from a rabbinical source. But what is strange here is Miriam died, and then it's like, who's mourning? Nobody take notice other than that she died. It's important enough that the book wrote down that she died. It's important enough that she's the oldest sister of both Aharon and Moshe. And yet she dies. And then next thing you know, you read about the people thirsty. And then what is so ironic here is that these people, this is the 40-year later generation. Miriam died in the 40th year. So this is the 40th year of the generation that came out of Egypt. And yet you say it was just the 40th year generation. How am I going to talk about what I remember coming out of Egypt? I wasn't born in Egypt. I'm born in the desert. I'm used to the desert life. I was born into a nomadic environment. Now, I'm glad you, those 19 years old and younger might have been born in the desert, but then you figure 40 years later, throw the 19 up, whatever the case is, those ain't going to be the ones that are going to be making the most noise. They're going to be the young bucks pretty much making the most noise. Now, what's even more ironic is that if we take, for instance, that these are the new generation, the young bucks, the ones that never was born in Egypt, never knew slavery in Egypt, never crossed the Yam Suf in Egypt, never witnessed none of the plagues in Egypt, and they was born in the desert. How is it that they can relate to that story so greatly, so vehemently, when you haven't been there? It's like some people that's born in the South, but they grew up in the North. They have very little relationship to it. And those that was parents from the South, but the kids themselves was born up North, they have no relationship to the South other than their parents. And same thing with the Caribbean, same way. If some parents was born in the Caribbean, the kids born in America, no relation to it. And some that was born in the Caribbean but came up very young, they have very little relationship to the Caribbean. So here it is. How are they going to talk about how slavery is better than being born in freedom? That is something so bizarre. And where they learned that from, where they get this idea, this concept that slavery, born in Egypt, where everything was so good at, but yet they were slaves, and they never knew about it, and they being treated good for 40 years in the wilderness, where they get that concept and say, well, wish you would have died like everybody else died. Now that is drastic measures. But when we think about it, you say, somebody been talking. Somebody been poisoning the mind. Somebody kept bringing that same noise over and over again. That's when you have to reflect on it. Say, hey, I mean, I know it was there, but from what I've been told, and that's how people go, you know. And sometimes you can indoctrinate somebody from rehearsing certain events so much over and over again, they act like an envision they actually was there. And the same gripes you might have, you'd say enough to another individual, he becomes sympathetic. Case in point, when the mixed multitude was lusting after meat, then Israel started lusting after meat. We just read about that not too long ago. So that's just something to consider. And then what happens here in the 6th verse, it says, all right, 6th verse. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly unto the door of the tent of meeting and fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto them. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, take the rod and assemble the congregation, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak ye unto the rock before their eyes, that it give forth its water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock. So thou shalt give the congregation and their cattle drink. All right, now I just like to go back just a little bit and see in the Hebrew, the 20th chapter. I'm going to bring out a point here. Let me see. I was just reading. 7th verse. Starting from the 7th verse and the 20th chapter. Quakat amate hal et ha'ida. Atawa haron makika, your brother. You know, and when you bought him, you know, Selah. Now, when it says, where they bought him, all right, that's in the plural. All right, Aaron and Moses. So remember that word. That's in the plural. Moses and Aaron are supposed to both speak to the rock. So a lot of times, you know, we might not see it in the English, but that word, you know, but a lot of times, and they would, you know, speak. They both of them supposed to speak to the rock. So that builds up the platform. All right. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord, as he was commanded, and Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said unto them, hear now, ye rebels, are we to bring forth water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and smote the rock with his rod twice, and water came forth abundantly, and the congregation drank in their cattle. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, because you believe not in me, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you should not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, all right, where the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. Who's the them? In the children of Israel, not in Moshe. All right, now the sin, one, just to paint a little story. Moses actually got angry 3 times, 3 major times in his life. First time he got angry was when he seen an Egyptian beating down an Israelite brother. So he killed the Egyptian. Angry. Haphazard, but he's angry. But he felt, somewhat justifiable in doing what he did. So he took it to the extreme. Second time, at the sin of the golden calf. When he found out they had built the golden calf, and the people was dancing and worshiping and playing, he broke the tablets that God had provided and wrote on. Angry. He tore it down. It wasn't his. It was a possession from God to us. But he got so angry, he tore it down. Bam. Broke it up. They say 3-strike rule, 3 strikes you out. Now, we know earlier, in the early parts of the Exodus, we get the chapter, but in the early parts, maybe 17, something like that, in the book of Exodus, or 20 something, whatever. You might have to research it. Don't fact check me on that. Because any mistakes been my own. So, but I know it's earlier. 40 years earlier, he was told to go with the elders, with the elders when they cried out about water. And when he went with the elders, when he cried, of course they cried about water, and had the rod that he stroked the river with, which is the Yam Suf. When he stroked that, when the sea parted and closed back, when he with that same rod, he was told to hit the rock then, and water gushed out, and everybody drank. So now, what's so hard about this? We say, okay, because he didn't believe in the Creator, how could you say Moses don't believe in God? How could you say Moses don't believe in the power of the Creator? How could you say that Aaron, the high priest, is co-conspirator with that same concept because he's tried and convicted by the Creator on the same offense that Moses did, though they both were supposed to speak for the rock? And how angry, now this is 40 years later, a whole new generation. Moses lived his whole life to try to get into the land. And yet, though his whole life was based on bringing them out of Egypt and bringing them into the land of their fathers. This is all smashed up in the 40th year. Then what's even so ironic, we say, well, that seems small. How many Israelites didn't believe in God and made it in? We could look at that. How many Israelites had little faith, shortness of the spirit, and made it in? So it's always a lot of controversies behind this here particular episode. But I just like to bring this up, and you could discuss it further with your various teachers from various congregations, because there's a lot of areas here that could be discussed. But I'd like to just throw a few things out in passing, glossing over it, is that, one, when we first realized that though they made this accusation, though they made this complaint, we read about Miriam dying. We don't hear about no time for mourning and everything like that, which we get into. We don't hear anything like that at all. Then the next thing when we hear certain things going on is that God didn't say they was wrong for asking for water. As a leader, you have responsibilities. You can't let anger get in front of you as a leader. And when people depend on you, as a leader, you got to put your personal feelings aside and deal with the job at hand. So now, if the Creator, after he appeared to him and told Moses to get the rod and bring the congregation, him and Aaron, and speak to the rock, then that means God didn't say they didn't deserve water. God didn't say they didn't need water. God wasn't angry enough to say, look, I'm gonna make them thirsty a little longer. And then if Moses bringing the rod that he struck the river with, they crossed the Yam Su, why bring it if you ain't gonna use it? What's the purpose of going to get the rod? What purpose would it have? I mean, I know what I did 40 years ago. Does it mean I need to do it again? I got specific commands from God to speak. And am I angry with the people? Am I angry with God? Or am I angry with myself? But I'm definitely going to take it out on this rock because I'm going to hit it twice. Not one time, twice. When God called Abraham 2 times. God called Moses 2 times. God called Shemuel twice. You know? And like an affirmation going on here. So, and it was Moses that was penalized, though the people had genuine issues. Because it says, God said, for their cattle, it said, righteous man regardeth the life of his beasts. So God said, so that even their cattle could drink. Not just them, it's the animals they bring with them. So that means thirst was a real issue. So I'll just leave that for y'all to discuss further on, you know, in that area. And I'm just going to move on to the next episode that in the 22nd verse. It said, which I find is pretty interesting. And the 20th chapter, Numbers 22nd verse says, and they journeyed from Kadesh, and the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, came unto Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given unto the children of Israel, because ye rebel against my word at the waters of Meribah. Wow. You know, that means death row is here. Penalty to be paid is right now. But what I'm just going to finish this part out because there's a couple of things I'm going to bring on and just go into the next portion. Then take Aaron and Eleazar his son and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered unto his people and shall die there. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up unto the into Mount Hor, in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there in the top of the mount. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they wept for Aaron 30 days, even all the house of Israel. And they didn't go up in the mountain, but they realized his son coming back with his outfit on. That's something. Now, there's always say, okay, did he strip him naked? And I want to bring out certain things here before I go into the next point, because there's so much stuff here, and I'm trying to be as brief as possible. But his son stripped him, said, did he strip him naked? Or did he just take certain items? We know the Kohen wear 4 articles of clothing, and the Kohen Gadol wear 8 articles of clothing. So my premise is, you could discuss it with your teachers, that Aaron didn't die naked. That only the 4 items that's exclusive for the Kohen HaGadol is what Aaron was stripped of, and not every single piece of clothes he had. I mean, that's just, pretty much Crown Prince Zurishaddai's viewpoint, and say, but you could discuss it with your teachers. But this is what I would share. That actually he wasn't naked when he was stripped of his clothing, because he just had 4 additional items that the regular Kohen didn't have, and swap turbans. Now, so now Eleazar looking, his rap is a little different from the rap that he had before. So, and then he got all this other stuff going on that he didn't have before. And so how do the people see Aharon dead? Well, you know, he gonna leave him up there with this garment. But it's, you know, like I say, you could discuss it further amongst your teachers and stuff like that, because I'm sure questions come up, because over the years we always have a lot of discussions on issues like that. That he walked. And then one of the great things is that a father got a chance to see his son fulfill his footsteps. That's one of the greatest accolades. Even if he had to die, he know that his position was inherited and ensured in his immediate family. And that's and then another thing to bring out is that how could Eleazar wear the Kohen garment when we know that anytime a Kohen become the Kohen, he's anointed? But then we go back and look at, they all was anointed at the same time. So therefore, you didn't need another anointment for Eleazar to be the high priest, because when his father was anointed, his other three brothers, including himself, was anointed at the same time. So therefore, he was able to fill in for his father at any given moment, you know, him or Ithamar, because they all was anointed at the exact same time. Just two of them died. So, but from that point on, when it passed on to the next high priest, from that point on, the next high priest had to be anointed into that office of HaKohen. All right, so, and you could all further discuss it with your various teachers on issues like that. One thing I like to bring out too is that because next week from the time I'm doing this here, basically we're in the fourth month. The 17th of fourth month is usually the fast, which is the fast of the fourth month, which is a daytime fast, you know. But since the 17th of the fourth month falls on the Shabbat, they push it back to the 18th, which would be, well, from the time I'm doing this video here, it'd be the following Sunday coming up, the 18th of this, this Sunday of this month. So if you remember, when y'all see the video, then the following weekend, which is Sunday, the near Sunday, that'll be the fast. So now, it's only a day fast. You know, it's not mandatory unless you follow rabbinic edicts, you know. And then if you read some from, excerpts from the Talmud or excerpts from the Sidra, then it'd be, a little different. Then you might be exempt from it. But that's coming up soon. But what's important, though, in the fifth month, Aaron is the only person, they mourn from 30 days. I want to bring out some things about mourning rites while I was speaking on that, is that mourning, you mourn for 30 days. Yaakov, they say 30 days of mourning and then 40 days of embalmment. Then they had, when they got into the land of Israel, stuff like that, a 7-day span, what you consider in a sitting shiva, amongst rabbinic areas. So that's where they adopt that from. Now, also, I like to bring out some other stuff when I was speaking about Aharon, is that under the, I believe, I'm not sure if I believe Rabbi Gamliel, who was a rich rabbi himself, when he passed on, he decided to be buried in a plain shroud, white shroud. Before, some rich people, it was no mandatory way you had to be buried, and what you was clothed in. But some people was, rabbis was poor and some was wealthy. And some people was very poor. So it was like embarrassing to bury their dead because they couldn't really dress them up, on a high level. So since Rabbi Gamliel was, a very, very wealthy rabbi, he desired when it was time to leave to be buried in a just plain white shroud, nothing fancy at all, plain box. So therefore, from that point on, it became a tradition that when people got buried, and even Muslims pretty much wrap you up plain white, whatever it is, that's it. It became a tradition that way everybody could leave the same, and it had to be no embarrassment when you put your beloved ones within a coffin that bury them at that time. So that's one of the traditions. And then the mourning period, like I say, you got a 7-day sit and shiva on 30-day mourning period. But it says here that the whole house, all the congregation, they rep before Aaron 30 days. And what's important also is that I was saying Aaron is so important. Out of all the other people in the whole scriptures, he's the only one that we have the exact date when he died. We don't have the exact date when Abraham died, Adam died, none of the patriarchs, anybody else in the book. All the great people you could think of in the book, we don't have the exact date when they died. But Aharon, the first high priest, the first Kohen, and when we get into the 5th month, the Rosh Chodesh, the month of Av, which is the next Rosh Chodesh to come up, that it's when the first priest, Aharon, died. And you find in the book of Numbers, the 33rd chapter, 38th verse, going to the 39th verse, when it gets the exact date that he actually passed on. So when Rosh Chodesh come up in the 5th month, not only we got a tragedy on the 9th of the month, which is this year would be celebrating and fasting on the 10th, because that also comes up on a Shabbat. But we also got to think about when the Rosh Chodesh coming on that particular month. We could mourn, so to speak, for two events. The first high priest, we know for a fact, died on Rosh Chodesh of the 5th month. And we know that the temples were destroyed around that particular time, completed on the 9th, start on the 9th, complete on the 10th of Av, on that particular time. So I'll speak more about that episode later on in the future. All right, we're going to go straight ahead and talk about the fights. Next thing you know, the next verse of 21 chapter says, and the Canaanites of King of Arad, who dwelt in the south, heard that Israel came by the way of Haftarah, and he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow unto the Lord and said, if thou wilt indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord hearkened unto their voice and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities, and the name of the place was CHOKMAH, utterly destruction. They didn't even try to live in those cities there. They just destroyed it. But what's interesting, this takes place after somebody important in their life died. Aharon, that shows you how important this man was. After he died, Moses still around, Miriam gone, Aaron gone, this in the 40th year. And it says, heard, tell that Israel came by the way of the Haftarah. All right. They know what it was all the time. But what else did they hear? Somebody that they held in high esteem, because Aaron lived and associated closer with the people than Moshe did. Aaron had a family that was going to be part and parcel to the people's experience, most of them Moshe's family did. And also, they can relate more with Aharon in that essence. And they figure that, I'm not without going to other stuff right now, that they got to be weaker spiritually. Because when a person is mourning, when a person is grieving, they really don't fight as hard and have the will to fight because they want to be caught up in their sorrow. And it says some people was taken captive. First time you read about Israelites being taken captive. The Amaleks was just beating down the slackers. But here you got people that's being captive pretty much. And that's a big thing. Then when they journeyed on and people was getting patient by the way, shortness of spirit. That's what that sounded like the same thing when Moses tried to bring them out of Egypt, and talk to Pharaoh. Pharaoh intensified the work and said, look here, I'm not going to give you straw. I want the same amount of bricks. So now they intensified. So when we look at that, what we find then that these people became impatient in spirit, but it goes on to say what? Well, have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there's no bread and there's no water, and our souls loathe this light bread. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much of the people died. All right. Now, what is unique here is that you're being fed every day. And like we say, bite the hand that feeds you. You're being fed. You're being taken care of every single day. And you say, I don't like the food that God gave me. Ain't that something? God gave you everything. Look out for you in every way. And you don't like the food that God gave you. So then you ain't talking against Moses. You're talking against the Creator, because he the one provided us the food. And unlike what a serpent do, a serpent that has no taste when he eats food, from what I'm told. I'm not that great in animal, or reptilian, studies, but from what I understand, that serpents, everything tastes the same to a serpent. But on the other hand, in contrast, the manna would taste like anything you thought it to be. It would taste like that in your mouth. So when we look at that, you're talking about the Creator, just like the serpent talks about, in the garden, has some tough words and everything. And we had some tough words and everything, derogatory words. And it said fiery serpent. Now, fiery, seraphim, sarap, it's like a fire, but when they say that, it don't mean like they was necessarily serpents made of fire, but the venom itself would be burning like you're on fire. And most people that you see, like in Westerns, I don't know, I never was bit. I hope, thank to God, hopefully I never get bit. Being in the state of Florida, you got to watch every place you see a high grass. You got to make sure you're looking to see nothing slithering around, because they got, between the Georgia state line and Florida, they got every kind of snakes, poisonous snake in the United States. They just be smaller, but they got rattles and everything you see throughout the whole North America. They got that between the Georgia state line and Florida. So, and then they got other snakes that was imported. So, looking at that and saying, the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he seeth it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass and set it upon a pole, and it came to pass that if the serpent had bitten any man, when he looked up unto the serpent of brass, he lived. All right. Now, I just want to bring out about that. Why, this is something you can discuss further. Why it did Moses, God told him put it on a pole. He said, make a serpent and put it on a pole and tell him to look at the pole. If they was bitten, they'll live. So now, God never told Moses what type of pole to put it on. He didn't tell him what kind of pole to put it on at all. And when we look at it again, say make a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole. That's all it says. What should it be made of? Should it be made of silver? Should it be made of gold? Should it be made of bronze? So now we get the thing where the word nakash itself also is the same root for enchantment, talker, smooth talker, whatever the case is. And in the kosher, it's actually bronze or brass. It's always debate. Some people might say copper, but it's in the kosher. So the people talk bad about the manna, and it's about something that had to be eaten. So they got bit. But what else did we got to look at before I go on, and push on just a little bit further, and then go into the Haftarah, which I'm looking at the time. I'd be a little longer than I thought. But when we look at what else can we think about is that though it was, they told him put the serpent on the pole and everybody look up and be healed. That's almost borderline to idolatry worship. That's very, very, very close to idolatry worship. And you say, well, like I said, discuss with your teachers, through various issues about why we had to look to the serpent and not let God heal us directly, and why look up to God. And they said, and that's after you was bitten. If you want to live, you had to look at that brass serpent. And we know later on and during the King of Time and Hezekiah time that, we started worshiping the serpent. Some people say it still had healing powers for certain things. And King Hezekiah wound up in this restoration of the place, destroyed it, and ground it up. But it was supposed to save that. And why save it if you ain't gonna look at it in the future? So it's a whole lot of issues so you could talk about in there. And the last thing, we're talking about the battle with Sihon and Og. You know, and we know that the first battle, messages were sent to Sihon, you know, the Amorites, and he came out and we whipped them up, you know. But when it came to Og, and Moses had to, you know, had the battle against Og, God told him to fear not. You mean tell me Moses was afraid of a man? But this is stated, fear not. And these guys were like big dudes. They were no little guys. And when you read about later on about Og's bed, you know, it had to be a comfortable bed. Talk about king size, king size, king size. And the guys are not just tall. He's broad, really thick. And like most of the people are big like that. But it was only this one guy, Og, you know what I mean, that God said, fear him not the rest of the people. Now, the rest of the people were big themselves, from most historians would say, but Moses actually had issues, and he just beat Sihon, related to him. And so why would God say, don't be afraid of Og? And then there was no letter sent to Og, because the territories that they acquired from Sihon, we already got that. So we in our own spot. So see, Og came out and met with us there. So just a little bit out of that. I'm going to the Haftarah right quick, the book of Judges. And I'm going to try to be a little bit faster on there. In 11th chapter of Yehudah, and see what we can come up with in this area. So we're going to be Judges, 11th chapter, first verse.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
We're in the book of Judges, chapter 11, verse 1. And it reads, Now Jephthah the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot. And Gilead begot Jephthah. And Gilead's wife bore him sons. And when his wife's sons grew up, they drove out Jephthah and said unto him, Thou shalt not inherit in our father's house, for thou art the son of another woman. Then Jephthah fled from his brethren and dwelt in the land of Tob. And there were gathered vain fellows to Jephthah, and they went out with him.
Hold me there, stop it there. Okay. All right, now, and it describes Jephthah as a Gibor Chayil, you know, a mighty man of valor, you know. Now, normally when we say a virtuous man, it's just like the virtuous woman. Eshet Chayil is for virtuous woman. Ish Chayil is a virtuous man, you know. And to be virtuous, you got to be valid, you got to have certain values. But here it says, he was a Gibor Chayil. So that means right then and there that he had honor and value only in the area of warriors, being a warrior, being a fighter. That's why they use the word Gibor Chayil as opposed to Ish Chayil. Because when we go to Proverbs 31, it's talking about Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. And it's talks about her integrity more so. Here it's going to be about his brawn. And then, it says his mother was a harlot. Now, you can never choose your family. So you didn't have no say-so about who your father hooked up with. And yet, just for the father acknowledging his son, it said, this is the son of Gilead, is saying that he merited some inheritance. He's supposed to get something out of the deal because he actually is a genuine son of his father. He can't help how his father stepped out the neighborhood a little bit for whatever reason, because this is the time of judges and every man did what was right in their own eyesight. But his father said, look, this is my son. And the other brothers recognized him as being family. They just was greedy about inheritance. And it said, and said, he wound up, putting them out when they grew up. So they got together and put them out. So now he went to a place of Tob, but it says, I think the word Rakim, Anashim or something like that. Let me just find out where the verse is. Gilead, boom, boom. Yeah, yeah. Anashim Rekim. All right, Anashim Rekim. All right, all right. Well, sometimes they might say vain fellows, whatever the case is, worthless fellows, but it actually means empty fellows, empty of certain values. In other words, we like the bandits that sits up on the hill. All we do is raid. That's how we make our living. And when he was put out from his brothers, he might have been kind of sore, but he rolling with some hard guys, so naturally he got to get hard. And like a guy to lead a family, say, look here, you're going to blood in or blood out. You know what I mean? Or you're going to be a cuz or not. So he got tougher hanging with a wild bunch, empty fellas. So, and if you want to survive, you already got put out your house. Where you going to go from there? And then they say he was with his moms. And these guys hung out with him. So they're doing good. And then his reputation grew. So now, since his reputation grew, and it wants to say, and say, dwell in the land of Tob, that means things were good for him. But go ahead, pick up from the 4 first.
Verse 4 reads, and it came to pass after a while that the children of Ammon made war against Yisrael. And it was so that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilead went to fetch Jephthah out of the land of Tob. And they said unto Jephthah, come and be our chief, that we may fight with the children of Ammon. And Jephthah said unto the elders of Gilead, did not ye hate me and drive me out of my father's house? And why are ye come unto me now when ye are in distress? And the elders of Gilead said unto Jephthah, therefore we returned to thee now, that thou mayest go with us and fight with the children of Ammon, and thou shalt be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead.
Before we get to 9th, hold right there. All right, before we get to 9th first. All right. Now, what's interesting is that the word Quasim is usually used there for, a chief in a sense like that, and it means more like an office. It's not like, in a sense of Rosh, even though later on they talk about Rosh being head, and that's what he wanted to be head, but it wasn't about a nobility status in that case. Said, you're like a military guy. We only need you to head up the army, and also they let you know during the time of judges, a guy could be a judge in Israel, but they only deal with a certain section. You notice it said the elders of Gilead, that's the tribe of Manasseh. He wouldn't be the chief of all Israel. He wasn't going to be the judge of all Israel. He just happened to be in the area, be a leader in that particular zone of Gilead, dealing with the elders of Gilead in that particular city, of those particular half tribe of Manasseh that stayed on the other side of Jordan. And then we know the history about, how we got the property, because it ended off with Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of the Bashan. So, and that land became, become part of Israel's inheritance with the 2.5 tribes. All right, so the 9th verse, it goes on to say.
Verse 9 reads, and Jephthah said unto the elders of Gilead, if you bring me back home to fight with the children of Ammon, and Yehudah deliver them before me, I will be your head. And the elders of Gilead said unto Jephthah, Yehudah shall be witness between us. Surely according to thy word, so will we do. Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over them. Jephthah spoke all his words before Yehudah in Mizpah.
Mizpah means watchtower. Okay, go ahead. That was a watchtower. All right, but all right. He want to know if this deal gonna be for real. Mm-hmm. And not only that, I want to go beyond my boundary. I don't want to just be a military head. I want to be head, period. I've been living out here on the outskirts. Now I want to come back home dignified. So it's going to cost you. So in other words, the bounty was him coming home and being a big shot. That was his bounty. All right, since he had no inheritance, that his kids, that his brothers didn't want him to have. But go ahead, let's see what happens to 12th verse.
Verse 12 reads, Jephthah sent messengers unto the king of the children of Ammon, saying, what hast thou to do with me, that thou art come unto me to fight against my land? And the king of the children of Ammon answered unto the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel took away my land when he came up out of Egypt, from the Arnon even unto the Yabok, and unto the Jordan. Now therefore restore those cities peaceably.
Hold it right there. Before you go to 14. They already beaten down the Israelites. Already warned with them already. That's why they went to get Yehudah. And they said, look, now you give it back to me. I ain't got to jeopardize none of my troops. I want this just handed over to me. But yet we already just read in the Sidra itself how we got those lands. And we know through history that the Amorites, and so I took them lands from Moab anyway, because we know later on in Deuteronomy, we wasn't supposed to get the land of Esau, we weren't supposed to get the land of Moab or Ammon, we weren't supposed to mess with their land, they had their inheritance. Other people took it and we got it back in the family, by way of, beating down some people. But but let's see what Yehudah says here. All right.
Verse 14.
Continue.
It reads, and Jephthah sent messengers again unto the king of the children of Ammon. And he said unto him, thus saith Jephthah, Israel took not away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon. But when they came up from Egypt, and Israel walked through the wilderness unto the Red Sea, and came to Kadesh, then Israel sent messengers unto the king of Edom, saying, let me, I pray thee, pass through thy land. But the king of Edom hearkened not. And in like manner he sent unto the king of Moab, but he would not. And Israel abode in Kadesh. Then he walked.
Before we go to 18. Now we know Esau said, look, I come out with my army. But God already said we can't have their land. Then we sent messages and said, look, I come out with the sword. That's what he was blessed with. So, and God let him know that you couldn't have the land of Esau anyway. All right. And Moab, we weren't thinking about taking Moab's land. So we find out later on that God didn't want us to have it. We read about it in Deuteronomy, but it was already predestined that we weren't supposed to get their land. What we got was a land that was occupied by people that weren't supposed to be there in the first place. That's what we got. All right. But this ain't the first time people use historic records to say who is the real landowners. See, and that's what's important. Do you have any historic record? Now here, if you don't know your history and have any kind of, historic knowledge about your past, people could tell you you're anybody. One of the things we just say, who are you? Don't tell me you're African. Don't tell me, about your religion. Tell me, who are you as an individual? What nationality you have as an individual? Do you know anything about your nationality as an individual? Black people in America, we just can't say, our history started from slavery. Because that doesn't cut it. So we know that here it is when they say history is being able to prove, and recite land deeds and how land was acquired. And so Yehudah going on, and he knows his history about his people. Very few Israelites study the book to know the history about even their forefathers today. Ain't that something? And they be acknowledge themselves, but they refuse to study the history of their forefathers today that's in the book. That's right at their disposal. And to show you how important history is, when people could tell you what belongs to them and you try to make a disclaimer, you got to run down the data. And that's what's important, being able to run down the data and show that it's a disclaimer. So we're going to pick it up from the 18th verse and continue there.
Verse 18 reads, then he walked through the wilderness and compassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab, and they pitched on the other side of the Arnon. But they came not within the borders of Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon. And Israel said unto him, let us pass, we pray thee, through thy land unto my place. But Sihon trusted not Israel to pass through his border. But Sihon gathered all his people together and pitched in Yahaz and fought against Israel. And Yehovah, the God of Israel, delivered Sihon out of, and Yehovah, the God of Israel, delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they smote them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. And
hold right there. All right, before we go to 22. All right. He telling them, look, you might claim it's your land. When we got there, somebody else was living there. Somebody else claimed it. All right. And and wasn't no dispute, who was in charge. We sent a letter asking for permission. We didn't send you a letter. And we sent them a letter. And he came out to try to fight. And that's how we got all that land. We fought for it. And so the thing is that I need to correct the history, and I'm going to explain it to you in detail, something that you want to omit. But now we're going to pick it up a little bit further, 22nd.
Verse 22 reads, and they possessed all the border of the Amorites from the Arnon even unto the Jabbok, and from the wilderness even unto the Jordan. So now Yehudah, the God of Israel, have dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. And shouldest thou possess them? Will not thou possess that which Chemosh thy God giveth thee to possess? So
hold right there. That's important now. Because everybody talk about who they worship. What they God do for them. All right. Well, if you got this God, I know who your God, I know who you pray to. I know a little bit about your religion. I mean, if your God, you pray to this God and he's so good to you, how come, he didn't give you that to possess it? If he give you something, when you keep it? Now, that's a little bit of an insult too, because no religion prior to our way of life could even attest that their God gave them anything. None. I mean, you can read all the different mythologies and stuff like that there. Where the so-called gods that the people worship gave them anything. If anything, they had to bribe and say, leave me alone, don't hurt me up. Allow me to do this, allow me to do me, allow me to be progressive in this area. So this is like a little snobby talk about his God, what he give him. But keep going.
Will not thou possess that which Chemosh thy God giveth thee to possess? So whomsoever Yehovah our God have dispossessed from before us, them will we possess. And now art thou not, and now art thou anything better than Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab?
All right there, let's explain one thing before we go to the king of Moab. All right. Balak means destroyer. That's what his name means. It means a destroyer. When he hired Balaam against us, y'all already spoke on it. I didn't get to it, but anyway, he said, "Look here, all I want you to do is weaken him so I could get my rep by beating him down. Curse him so I could whip him. Don't kill him. Curse him so I could get the honor of beating him down." That's one of the things in reference to that. But keep going. All right.
25 reads.
King. Yes, King of Moab. Okay.
And now art thou anything better than Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel, or did he ever fight against them? While Israel dwelt in Heshbon and its towns, and in the Aroer and its towns, and in all the cities that are along by the side of the Arnon, 300 years. Wherefore did ye not recover them within that time?
Well, don't we got a what they call a jubilee? Yeah. We got jubilees in our places, stuff like that. Now you're talking about if we just say an even jubilee, in 300 years, you figure 6 jubilees. If you just say they happen on the jubilee, 606 jubilees. Nobody tried to claim them in all that time. Now all of a sudden, when I developed it, and we've been here and living here, and it's about in our home, and we took it from somebody that you couldn't take it from, all of a sudden now you're going to claim it. And I'm saying you're not as tough as the guy that was there before us. You're not that tough. And he was superstitious. Balak was not only a warrior, but he was superstitious. So you're not even tough like that. And he had a guy that he knew that had some skills. We didn't even see you shoot nobody over here that got some skills. But let's pick it up just a little bit more, 27.
Verse 27 reads, I therefore have not sinned against thee, but thou doest me wrong to war against me. Yehovah the judge be judged this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. Howbeit, the king of the children of Ammon hearkened not unto the words of Jephthah which he sent them.
You want to hear that. Keep going.
Then the spirit of Yehovah came upon Jephthah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over
Keep going.
Mizpeh of Gilead, and from Mizpeh of Gilead he passed over unto the children of Ammon. And Jephthah vowed a vow unto Yehovah and said, if thou wilt indeed deliver the children of Ammon into my hand, then it shall be that whatsoever cometh forth out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, it shall be Yehovah's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. Hallelujah.
All right. We got to go to the 33rd.
33rd. Oh, Slika. So Jephthah passed over unto the children of Ammon to fight against them, and Yehovah delivered them into his hand. And he smote them from Aroer until thou comest to Meniph, even 20 cities, and unto Abel Keramim, with a very great slaughter. So the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Yisrael. Hallelujah.
Yeah, so right then, we know he took the fight to him, but he prayed. But he took the fight to him. He hung out with some bad fellas, but he had some good background. You know, before he left his father's house, he learned a couple things here and there. So not only he developed as a warrior, hanging out with other guys, got toughened up, as some of the brothers, young brothers say, he pulled his weight up, a little bit, to go to the gym, got his skill tight and everything like that, so he became battle trained, but he also remembered from whence he came. And so one of the things, though, being in the time of Judges, sometimes when you be too far away, and this is a thing for leaders that I'm close with, that as a leader, not only you're not supposed to let your anger get in the way of you, in a way of what you need to do, but you also, must also watch what you say, and as a leader, because if you're saying as such a great man as him, that the first thing cometh out my house to meet me, that I will offer up to the Lord as a burnt offering. How much people in ancient times and keep animals in their house, They didn't do that. So what would make you think that the first thing come out your house to meet you, you're going to offer up as a burnt offering? And plus, knowing the laws of Israel, if a firstling has a blemish, we can't offer that up as a firstling. So that means you indiscriminately don't care what you give to the creator of heaven and earth. So there's a lot of lessons. We got two leaders that we read about in the Sidra. We read about Moses, well, three basically, Moses and Aaron, and we read about Jephthah. Each one, mouth, got them in a little bit of trouble. So a takeaway is that, we know, that we got to be able to be much more circumspect in what we say, and be the message we bring, the song we sing. And with that, I say any mistakes by my own, and I appreciate the time, and I say Shalom Aleichem, Shabbat Shalom.
Hallelujah. Torah by Nasik for another wonderful lesson. Thanking the creator of heaven and earth for your life and for all that you bring to this platform. And I pray and I hope that the Most High God continue to be with you and bless you. Shalom, shalom.
And all. Shalom, shalom.